You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Joining us today in our podcast studio are the Senior League NBA photographers, two of them, Andrew Bernstein and Nat Butler. Andrew Bernstein is the NBA's longest-tenured photographer, not to mention the official photographer for the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Kings. He's the director of photography for the Staples Center and Nokia Live and has held the position of Senior Director of NBA Photos, an organization he helped to create. Andrew's a founding partner of Legends of Sport, a frequent guest on ESPN's Sports Center and The Jump, and he created and co-produced Through the Lens, a popular show on Spectrum Cable Sportsnet. In his spare time, he's published a few books, including Journey to the Ring, which documented the 2009-2010 Lakers championship season. His most recent book is The Mamba Mentality, which was written by a fellow named Kobe Bryant. This year, Andy was inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame. Nothing small beans about that. Nat Butler is the senior official photographer at NBA Entertainment. He shot every NBA Finals and All-Star game since 1986. Based in the New York, New Jersey area, Nat spends most of the season shooting the Eastern Conference. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
Nat, you're a newbie here, okay,
Yes.
and you are a return guest. You're a veteran here. We have to get a T-shirt for you or something.
Before we talk about the book, let me ask you about, you have a podcast now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us about it a little bit.
Well, I have a podcast called Legends of Sport, where it's a whole change of life for me, where I'm sitting on the other side talking to an iconic figure in sports, be it a iconic retired athlete, somebody who's been influential in any sport. It's been a great experience for me. We just finished our first season, did 30 podcasts, which was pretty amazing. And I don't know how I shoehorned that in time-wise, but it's on the Podcast One network, and people can get it on Apple iTunes, on Apple Podcasts. So we're coming up with season 2 starting after the first of the year and building up quite a roster as we speak of prospective guests. So I'm looking forward to it.
Have you ever had any podcast hosts on your show?
Have not. Well, that's a good question. Are you coming out to L.A., Alan?
Hey, listen,
we'd love to have you.
Okay. If there's chocolate rug look there, I'm on my way.
Right. But we also have had a couple of really, really great photographers. John McDonough, my great friend and Nat's friend from Sports Illustrated for a million years. Right. And my good friend, John Suhu, who was a longtime Dodgers photographer, but was my assistant. He started off with me back in the early 80s. So it was, we're trying to incorporate photography as best we can in the podcast, as well as anybody in sports who fits the bill.
It's not necessarily basketball centric?
No, not at all. Yeah. No, it was NBA heavy from the beginning because we launched during NBA All-Star Weekend, which was kind of fun. But I've had people like Amy Alcott, Kirk Gibson, Oral Hershiser. We had the Hall of Fame and Triple Crown jockey Mike Smith was on 3 days after he won the Triple Crown, which was fantastic. So Peter Guber was a great guest,
I actually photographed his boat many years ago.
Peter Guber's?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, a boat called Oz.
Well, he's unbelievable. He's been a great mentor of mine.
It's great. Tell us about this book. It's a beautiful book, by the way. That's Mamba Mentality.
Yeah, well, the book was really a labor of love. As Nat knows, being able to photograph one athlete over a 20-year period is, we've been around a lot of these guys. I mean, he was with Patrick Ewing his whole career in New York, and of course I was with Magic, and then have Kobe as a 18-year-old rookie, and then photograph his whole career and really be kind of, embedded with the team for that period of time. Built up a lot of trust, a lot of behind-the-scenes moments, and we got to the end of his career, and he retired, and I went to him with a proposal for a sort of a nice coffee table book,
Right.
And had sort of a prototype, and I brought it to him, and he very patiently went through it and looked at it, and nodded a couple of times, and then closed it and said, "This is really great, and we are going to do a book together, but it's not going to be that book." I said, "Okay, what are we going to do, Mamba?" And he said, "No." He said, "I've been thinking about some way to get people into my head, how I played," because he was very enigmatic. I mean,
Yeah.
Kobe really never let anybody in. For the first time, he's sharing what his process and his craft were during his career. He's really letting people in.
How early did you get the seeds for this book? I mean, not the one that you actually did, but just thinking about a book. At what point did it start hitting
It was in his end run there, like the last 3 or 4 months that of his farewell tour. And I was thinking that, to have this body of work over 20 years, it's a shame for it to just kind of sit there,
Right.
There meaning like in the NBA archive and on Getty.
Yeah.
So let's figure out a way to get it out there to the public, because there's so much that we shoot that people don't see.
Sure.
I mean,
right.
they're seeing the tip of the iceberg of what we shoot.
And Kobe did that farewell tour in all the cities, and you realized how iconic he was just to all of us who are fans.
Beloved.
He's not just LA based.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
And talk a little bit about the process. I mean, you mentioned Getty and the NBA archives. Did you work with a team of people that just kind of scoured the archives, or did you say, "Hey, I remember this shot, go find that one," or how'd that process work?
Well, first of all, you got to remember that half of Kobe's career, 10 years of his career, were before digital.
Right.
So it was all shot on film, and our film is pretty well cataloged and archived at the NBA Entertainment office in New Jersey, in Secaucus. So the NBA has done a pretty good job of scanning sort of the greatest hits and the matchups. So a good part of what we were looking for was on Getty, but then we had to do a pretty deep dive. I mean, Kobe literally remembered moments of games that I didn't even remember I was even at the game, but he would remember, "Oh, you remember the 2000 Western Conference Finals? This literally happened. Game 3, I think it was the second quarter, where I faked Bruce Bowen to the baseline. He took the bait, and then I made that move, and then I dunked. I'm like, sure.
Yeah, Kobe, sure. Right.
Oh, that one.
And then he said, "You have that picture, right?" And sure, I'll find it. So then I called one of our friends back at the office there in NBA Photos, like, "You guys still have that Game 3 of the 2000 Western Conference Finals?" Wow. And they actually have it pretty well cataloged. So we were able to find what we needed.
It must be kind of cool that he was actually maybe more into the book than you initially were. It sounded like he had a whole concept. He took it to a different level, is what I'm getting.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there was stuff that he talks about in the book that I had no idea was going on. Like, for example, he talks about how he studied the referee's handbook so that he would know where the referees would be positioned at certain points in the game where the ball was located, right? So that he could get away with like holding a guy that the refs was sort of in their blind spot. So we would have to find photos that showed that, like him holding, Tracy McGrady or somebody, and you can actually see it. You can see in the photo. I didn't know that.
Well, there's a good shot with him and Rodman, right? Well, Rodman's kind of grabbing him.
Yeah.
And he's getting squeezed between Michael and Rodman.
Yeah,
for a shot.
and the caption on that was, "This was fun." Yeah,
I bet. Yeah, and Kobe himself is starting to become a media figure too, and he's doing a lot of other things and kind of reaching out to these figures, as you mentioned earlier. But can you elaborate a little bit on the relationship with the NBA archive and entertainment? I mean, and your photos, they're copyrighted NBA or copyrighted you, and when you go back to get them, do you have to pay the royalty fees and stuff like that? And what kind of team worked on this book?
Well, the NBA owns the copyright to everything that we've shot. So,
that goes for both you guys?
Yeah. And that's the way it's been, I mean, for a couple of decades now, right?
Right.
And across the board, that's pretty much the way it is for all the major sports. So Getty Images is the licensing partner for the NBA. So any photo that anyone needs worldwide that Nat and I or any photographer who works in the NBA has shot, they first go to Getty and they look on Getty Images on the site. If the photo's not there, then they call Getty or the NBA. But the NBA and Getty have this contractual relationship where Getty has the rights to license worldwide, right? So in doing the book, the publisher had to come to an agreement with Getty, actually, to license my photos for the book. It's a specific use, right? And Getty was very amenable to making a good deal. They, everybody wants to work together. They certainly weren't going to stand in the way of the book getting done. And it was important to the NBA and NBA photos for the book to be done because it's a nice showcase of what we do as a group. Myself, but also, what NBA photos can do. And so that, everyone worked together and luckily, we have a good small group of researchers and editors at NBA photos, led by our boss, Joe Amati, who Joe took this under his wing because he really wanted to be part of this project. So some photos Joe actually remembered that I didn't remember, or if Joe was busy, he got one of the guys back there to kind of help. And like I said, about 95% of what we were looking for, we found. And if we didn't find it, then it probably didn't exist, or we were able to use something else that kind of told the story that he was trying to tell.
From your film days, how much of that is digitized right now? You know what percentage roughly?
I don't know. What would you think, Nat?
It's tough to say because it's always difficult to go backwards.
Yeah.
And there's tons of stuff that still needs to be scanned. So it's almost done on a
per need basis.
Correct.
Okay.
Years ago, we did a project, NBA at 50.
Right.
And that was all done on film. But going back to look for a Bill Russell shot, you would then scan it. You need a project to initiate going backwards. And probably half of Kobe's, I think I want to say 2003-ish, because we were just talking about LeBron earlier. It was sort of, I was a last holdout. I was still shooting film the first year or two of LeBron's career because the film was just so, I was definitely a holdout. It was just so beautiful. So you need a project to go backwards, but the Kobe is a perfect example. But it is hard to put a number of a percentage on it.
Is there an ongoing digitizing thing regardless? In other words, obviously it's project driven, but when there's nothing really needed, is there anybody in their downtime who's just saying, okay, let's get another few hundred of these images scanned?
There is, the key word there is downtime. Once the season starts, we're busy. We're busy in the summer with WNBA. There's an Olympic project going on in the summer. There's not a whole lot of the quote-unquote downtime.
And can you talk about NBA photos a little bit, like how big the organization is and the number of editors and photographers and even how they manage the workflow amongst the various games that go on?
It's a pretty involved group.
Sure.
It has changed from film to digital, but essentially at every NBA game there is a quote-unquote team photographer shooting for NBA that evening. And what has changed in the last couple of years, which has made our job a little more time-consuming and difficult, everything is considered live now with digital. Right. The cameras are all tethered. I hit a shutter at a Knicks game at MSG. Those images appear in Secaucus 4 seconds later.
Wow. And that's like that around the country.
Yeah. Whether you're in Minnesota, LA, Chicago, that's the way.
Every image.
Correct. So there's a night crew that deals with the incoming games, and then that is primarily social media driven now. Yeah. The teams have instant access to it. NBA has instant access to it across their social media platform. Then the following morning, there's a different shift that come in. They'll do what we refer to as a second edit. It might be a classic image, but maybe not necessarily pertinent to the game the night before, but it's definitely something that you want to archive. And
as photographers, how do you, I guess the question is, you don't have a chance to edit your work at this point at all, right? It all goes to somebody before.
You know what, it does, but we have now with technology, actually when I hit the button, that image goes to NBA, it goes to the team, it also goes to my home server at the same time. Right. So there were instances of mine personally when the film was one of one.
Right.
A great shot got lost in the back in the day. Yeah. Now with digital, you do. Yeah. It is much easier to archive and catalog properly.
Right.
And now, when you go, how often do you hit your own personal server and do your own editing? Do you just look at it, or you just know that it's there and it's fine? And
You
don't
know
worry
what?
about it?
I am pretty on top of it because we work hard, and I want
The best stuff to show, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll go back and we don't usually for NBA because you don't slow things down dealing with the raw images. I'll archive, a select number of raw images per game, and again, it's just for historical purposes. We were all sort of old school and brought up that way.
Keyword is old.
You want
Search old, you'll find us.
You want a Kobe Bryant classic shot 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah. And the way it used to be, just so you guys know, is before NBA Photos was created, even the beginning of NBA Photos in the mid 80s, was that every team had their own team photographer. But that team in that market would only see what that photographer shot. So if you're if you're the Warriors team photographer, you'd only see the Warriors in their arena in their home uniform. So when NBA Photos was created, one of the great selling points to the teams was that, you can see your team in every arena and, playing away games and not just in your home whites, but also in your away uniforms. And then we started traveling with teams. So there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And it was very attractive to the team. So basically, and the way it works now is that, and there's very, very few vacancies. You gotta think about it, there's 30 teams. Nat and I do 2 teams each. So there's only 26 jobs really out there.
Right.
The photographers who have these jobs have been there at least, I think probably 10 or 12 of us have been there at least 20 years or more. But we report directly to NBA Photos, but we're pretty much leased out to the local team, so that team knows that we're there for them and whatever their needs are.
But the other team, let's say the Cleveland team photographer, he is hired by the Cavs, but his contract obliges him to give images to NBA after every game, or
he's hired by the NBA.
He is hired by the okay.
with the Cavs' blessing.
Gotcha.
So. If there's an opening, which, like I said, is very infrequent, but there have been over the last few years, the NBA Photos will find a photographer in that market, or somebody will move to that market, but the team has to approve that. They have to be comfortable with that.
Let's say
person.
you're a longtime Cleveland plain dealer, sports, you covered the Cavs for 20 years. Would that job then be a plum gig to try to get over to work for the NBA and theoretically?
I would think so.
As opposed to
the
local news guy?
Yeah. It's, being a staff photographer or a league photographer or a team photographer still has some prestige to it, even in this day and age.
Right.
Well, especially in this day, because everybody's freelance.
Yeah.
Staff positions in general are very difficult to get.
Yes, for sure.
And that's where I think with NBA in particular, the social media aspect comes into play. Andy and I tell this story often. Andy and I were more, again, we'll use the word old school. We grew up. We both assisted for Sports Illustrated was the primo of the primo jobs.
Right.
There's no doubt about that. So we assisted. Then fortunately we started shooting for Sports Illustrated. If you were to get a cover of Sports Illustrated, it was a pretty big deal. And I remember at the time it was 3 million people are subscribed to Sports Illustrated. Now with NBA, and they really had some foresight into promoting their product via social media. They have 30 million followers on Instagram, and I want to say 28 on Twitter.
Yeah.
So we're talking about we hit the shutter of a crazy play at the Garden or at Barclays Center. It goes to Secaucus. They have a social media team that works evenings too. That image from us pressing the button could be posted to literally 58 million people in under 5 minutes.
Yeah. So it's
pretty remarkable.
It's as close to live coverage as we can probably get as a still photographer.
And do they have different editors? The social media editors, I assume, are working separately than, let's say, what other editors they have? The news editors or the archive editors?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
And do you guys know, or have you kind of come to realize, okay, this is I just took a social media shot compared to a
at
front
times,
page of the website?
Sure, at times.
Yeah, there's a big initiative. There's been one for a while of what the guys are wearing when they come in. So now, when we used to shoot once in a while the guys arriving. Now it's like every game, even like the bench guys.
You're talking about before they get to the locker room.
The arrivals
fashion.
coming off the bus are coming, for in a home game, like once they park their car, because people want to see
what they're wearing.
These guys are wearing. Not just
the Westbrook effect.
Not just
right?
it's the Westbrook
absolutely.
effect, but not just Russell. And then I was talking before we got on is these guys are savvy. They know if
It's part of their branding.
right, and the NBA now is partnering. And you probably get this too. They're partnering with apparel lines, not just Nike or whoever, but fashion lines. So we'll get a note, hey, so-and-so is coming in wearing this brand, and we've been asked to get some photos and post that.
Wow.
Which is
So
the whole new
your
world.
days start a lot sooner than they used to, is what it sounds like. You're a lot busier, up and running well before
You know what?
the game.
It is, and I'm sure Andy can attest to this for our family life. I'm at the arena at 2:00 for a 7:30 game.
Yeah.
We're testing, and between it's a good example. Staples Center, MSG Bar, they have a hockey game, a concert, a tennis, something the night before, and you have to redo everything.
Right.
Nothing can stay in, and it's running Ethernet cables to every camera now, and it requires a lot of time.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that stays there. You basically have to strip everything down and rebuild
Correct.
for every game.
I mean, I'm fortunate because both my teams play in the same arena. Thank God. I mean, Nat has to then pull everything out. If he has a game in the Garden tonight, which he does, pull it out, then schlep it over to Barclays for another game.
Wow.
Luckily I have an equipment cage there at Staples. Back in the old days where I had the Lakers at the Forum and the Clippers at the Sports Arena, it was I had to pack everything in cases, schlep it out, bring it back to bring it to the next arena, and now we do that when we travel.
And now you do the Kings and also the LAFC.
Yeah.
And do you have a separate setup there? Or
Yeah, because it's a whole different situation for hockey, and then soccer. Soccer, is basically it's you and a long lens and a short lens.
Okay, so
and then I have a digital tech who downloads stuff, and the LAFC has staff people who are photographers and social media people, but they brought my group in because we have so much experience being a team photographer. We know like the nuts and bolts of doing that.
And you're shooting JPEGs and RAW
Yes.
for these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the RAWs are using. I don't even know why we're shooting RAW anymore.
I was
actually.
questioning that because of the fact that you're working in similar environments.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much what your exposures and what your light.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're guessing that I think this is. But you don't need
Right.
that 4 stops of slop to.
No, but I think
Make
they
up
want
for
to
things.
just have that giant RAW file so that they can manipulate it, do whatever they want with it after the fact.
Because 100 megs
Yeah.
isn't big enough.
It's not
actually.
big enough.
well, have you
No.
seen that thing they put a LeBron on the building outside of Cleveland?
Right, right.
How big
Yeah.
is your team, Nat? I mean, or do you? I know you have a full staff. I mean, including
You know
your
what?
son, right?
Yeah.
But,
I have an assistant that helps with the cameras and the gear, and then I have a digital person with me at every game.
Okay.
Just to have the workflow, making sure. And again, you're only one lost connection or kinked wire from everything going south.
Right,
so it is like, in addition to the pressure of getting the shot, it's then the back end of that shot then being, delivered to the appropriate people in a timely fashion, because the good of social media is great, but people want things instantaneously now. No one wants to wait for
in
it.
general, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it seems like the NBA has done the best of the major sports leagues in terms of image savvy and getting out these images and being social media present.
I would agree, and I think Andy can also attest to it. The players are pretty savvy.
True.
And basketball does lend itself to beautiful photography. Like, obviously I'm a fan, but football, they have the helmet on, there's pads. You don't have the intimacy that you do in basketball. Basketball, we're close to the court. We have the great equipment and technology to capture those images, whether it's the shot of Kobe on the book where he's, you show little beads of sweat.
Right.
You could never get that.
You're down
in
there.
Football.
How far are you from him on the bench,
Like,
right? I mean,
baseball, they play a lot of games at night where the lighting is not as good, or they're wearing a helmet.
Right.
You can't get.
you're not that
Basketball
close.
does lend itself to a lot of aspects that the other sports don't.
Right.
How many, aside from, you have a camera in your hand, but you're also shooting tethered to other cameras. How many cameras are you at? When you hit that shutter button, how many cameras are going off?
Typically what I do is when I'm sitting in front of me, I have two cameras, so I'm picking up one or the other. And then when the ball goes down the other end of the court is where I set up primarily more of the remotes. And it does vary from game to game slightly, but there's anywhere from 4 to 6 other cameras, and we're using between 6, 8, 10 cameras.
And your shutter button on your camera is the one that's triggering the other, like you said, when they go to the far end of the court, you're still taking a picture with your camera in your hands.
It can be set up that way, or we use a little auxiliary button. Like the second they turn around, you hit that button and want to get their face instead of their back.
Ah, okay.
And it still is tricky. Like a lot of people don't understand using the strobes, which lends itself to the better quality, obviously, but you can't shoot on a motor.
Yeah,
so we're talking about shooting one frame every 4 seconds. On a dunk, you don't get the newspaper guy sitting next to me getting 12 frames. I'm getting one frame.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of
and that's because of
timing
the speed of the strobe.
Strobes
Correct.
have to recycle
Regeneration,
back.
correct.
Yeah.
And what are your parameters for lighting on strobe? Because I would imagine that if you are playing out on that court, you got a lot running on you there. And meantime, you got lights going off in your eyes. That's got to be distracting to the players. Are there any no-fly zones for shooting? I mean, what do you do as far as that?
The strobes are so far up that I've never had an NBA player. I only had one time I ever had a complaint about strobes was from a hockey goalie because it would kick off the ice, but with Staples Center is a 225-foot ceiling, so it's coming from such a far distance that I think the players perceive that it's like fans taking snapshot photos, honestly, because and TV doesn't like it because it kind of whites out their still frames that when they do their super slow-mo. But I don't think you've ever had a complaint.
Using parabolic reflectors, just narrow, so it's all very narrow angle.
Unless you're really looking for it, the flash duration is ridiculously short. It's 500th or 640th of a second, the duration.
Yeah.
And you don't really notice it. And we do work in conjunction with the TV and stuff. So obviously most sports are network driven, and
so you're not
really
shooting at top sync
complaints.
speeds. You're going beyond. You're going to FP mode and all that stuff. You're going beyond the typical synchronizations.
Well,
or no?
I'm always looking for a better mousetrap. We work with the LPA group, with these things that Andy and I were both instrumental in developing, the Flash Wizards, and as great as some of these cameras are, the sync speed of 250,
that doesn't fly.
You want more, so we always are trying to push the envelope a little bit. And
back in the day, we were shooting with Hasselblad, so we had that 500th of a second sync, which was incredible.
It's noticeably different.
That's the good news. The bad news, it was a Hasselblad.
Yeah, no, we loved it.
I tell you something. My friend over here was the king. I mean, literally. His Hasselblad work was second to none.
Well, you had to know what you were doing. Yeah. That was it, because you had one chance to push that button. There was no motor whine.
You know what? It was more, I would like to say, it was more cerebral. You weren't, like, again, the newspaper used these expressions, spray and pray. Like, you're going to get something. The cameras are beautiful. The lenses are beautiful. But it was a little more cerebral.
And creative.
Like, it's like shooting a 4x5.
Yeah.
By the time you load the film and do this, and it takes a little bit of mental prep to do that.
Well, we have the subject here. Can you think of any Hasselblad shots, legendary Ewing, or is this pre-Ewing, or I mean, I just trying to throw out any
like
ideas.
I said earlier, I was a holdout. I held on to that as long as I could, and they're beautiful. And believe it or not, the square of the Hasselblad lent itself to basketball too. You would think it's more vertical, but the square was just absolutely beautiful. The beads I would shoot under the basket with oftentimes 80, but most times a 120 lens, and you're following the ball, focusing, and you just hear the shutter click, and you just felt good.
Yeah.
It was an exciting time, to be honest.
Yeah, and the depth that you would get in that film was just insane.
Yeah. And actually, it's one of the questions I had. Does getting a great remote shot feel as good as getting a great shot out of a handheld camera?
You know what? It doesn't to me, to be honest, simply because like you never know.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant was in the Garden the other night. He had a crazy dunk on the opposite end. I got the picture, but I didn't love it because he was like outstretched 7-footer, but there was a random guy's head over his shoulder that just didn't.
Such a perfectionist.
No, we're all very fussy. But the satisfaction of doing something is still.
Yeah,
I like that.
But what the beauty of a remote shot is that so much preparation went into it, and to see all of that come to fruition in that one frame means that you did your job.
And have you guys ever tried like automatic releases where there's some sort of movement that happens, like maybe from through the backboard shots where a hand comes into frame and the camera releases? Is there anything like that going on?
Not exactly, but like I said earlier, we always are trying to push the envelope. What we both have noticed of late is the NBA has changed. There's a guy coming in and have a wide open layup or a dunk, and he'll kick it to the corner for a 3-point shot. Like the game itself has changed.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah,
and you don't have, going way back to a Russell Chamberlain or a Ewing, Hakeem, Shaq. You don't have these centers in the key doing battle anymore. It's a much more perimeter game.
True.
Cool.
Okay, we're going to take a short break and be back with Nat and Andrew. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BH Photo Video, hashtag BH Photo Podcast.
Okay, we are back. John, you had a question you want to ask.
Well, I just kind of wanted to follow up before, Nat, you were talking about the cameras that you carry with you, or the ones that you shoot handheld.
Right.
What are the lenses you use? And
what are the
bodies?
I use the Canon, the Mark II DX handhelds, and I have a 28 to 300 primarily.
Okay.
And then a little short lens that I'll go like 16-35. Right. Occasionally, I'll throw on the 2 to 400 on there to get like tight bench shots, nice portraits.
So if you're underneath the basket, in order to get, let's say, all of that action that's going on for a rebound, what's that angle more or less?
You know what? I mix it up, and that's why now the zooms are so much sharper than they used to be. Sometimes I'll go for a rebound just tight on hands and the ball, and it'll be 135, 150-ish, or you can go real wide and get the guys on the ground looking up. It's a 35 or something.
About a 35.
Yeah.
Okay. And with all the trips back and forth down the court, do you think to yourself, okay, well, on this trip down, I'm going to try to do this? Or is it all determined on the play as it's coming to you?
That's a great question. It's a mix. There's always the context of the time period, who's in the game, or who's on the bench. If there was just a crazy play, you pan to the bench and get the guys hooting and hollering on the bench as someone is inbounding the ball. And again, one of the things about those zoom lenses are you can mix it up. You go head to toe. A lot of, like Andy mentioned earlier, it's a big deal about what the sneakers the guys are wearing. You can zoom in tight and get the sole, the underside of the sneaker has a design on it.
How do you guys feel? I mean, maybe this is on the record and I know this is part of your job, but does that bother you to kind of have to shoot all this stuff, or are you so used to shooting hoops?
It doesn't bother me because it's part of what we do. But I've been burned a couple of times. I've been, because you got to get them when they're stopped. For example, a guy might be waiting in the corner, bringing the ball up, and I get a quick shot of the shoes, but then I'll miss an alley oop. I'm like, damn, I gotta shoot those damn shoes again.
Yeah, right. And I'm just kind of curious. Well, I mean, with your team, do you have one of your assistant also shooting, or that just is your job?
Well, right now with the Laker games, we have a second photographer, but the spots on the floor have been decreased significantly. So we've gone from back in the old days, you had 4 quadrants, and you'd had maybe 10 to 12 photographers like jammed in each quadrant. Now there's 3 of us, I think, on each two of us on each quadrant.
And that's because
So-
NBA has kind of taken
Yeah, well,
control
there was
of
some
the
issues
imaging.
with players getting hurt, and they wanted to clean it up a little bit. And,
Okay.
and
who got removed? Local newspapers or the
Pretty much.
the ad hoc
yeah,
freelancer?
But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Must have some kickback about that from the newspapers, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. You have three or four entities sharing a spot. One newspaper gets the first quarter, then the next quarter the wire service gets it, then maybe some specialized magazine that's in town, like International or wherever, gets it. So they're not happy about it. And
It's a tough-
Is it
can understand
costing
it.
these newspapers more to publish these, or is it really the same cost for them?
No, it's the same cost. It's just the access has been curtailed dramatically.
And
Yes.
I think there's also, in conjunction, there's been an increase in the number of TV cameras.
Yeah.
Because basketball is a beautiful game to watch on television, like we were talking about earlier. And similar, we're trying to push the envelope. So are they, with more cameras. They use VR cameras. They use a dunk on super slow-mo looks great. That's a specialized camera.
Yeah.
And most sports now, economically, it is being driven by, TV broadcast
Right.
rights.
And then in any given game, you'll have three different TV feeds. You'll have the local team feed, you'll have the visiting team feed, and then you'll have a network feed. So we call it triple feed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh? What about, for example, the setup shots? You had a shot of Trae Young on your Instagram feed recently. It was like set up in his locker room, something that almost you might want to call like
Gotcha,
a basketball
yeah.
card. It looked
Right.
like his debut
what,
moment.
It's funny
Yeah,
you said that
yeah.
because that was on an assignment for Panini.
Oh, okay.
That
All right.
we do every year a rookie. We call it a rookie shoot, and it is an unveiling of the new
Panini
the new rookie. And it is funny because we recreated a locker room scene.
Really?
And what's funny for me over the years has been how young these guys are. It's really remarkable. They're literally their kids. They're 19 and 20 years old. Is kind of remarkable.
We
is
have
that a-
kids older than that. So, yeah.
I think some of my cameras are older. That's a different story.
It's true.
But is this a big part of the job too, or is it something totally separate through Panini? Or
You know what?
how often do you-
that's a big shoot once a year in the like August leading up to the year. But I love that kind of stuff. You sort of get to know the guys, and you can do a little something out of the box more creatively. It's not just I do enjoy doing, the other portrait work, environmental portraits or something. It's not just about the game.
What's more enjoyable to do, the game or the off the court stuff where you're playing around a little more looser and things of that sort? What do you?
I really love both.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of opportunities to do much off the court stuff as much as we used to. Like
That's why I was
an
wondering if it'd be
assignment
more
from
fun.
from a magazine. They don't really do a lot of that type of stuff. Or now, to be honest, a lot of the players do that themselves, and then they'll provide stuff to a Players Tribune, or that seems to be the way that some of the media stuff is going. But I do enjoy that.
Let me ask you about the the locker room celebration photos. How's that go for you guys?
Well, it's as close to combat photography as we can get as sports photographers.
Now that's changed a lot because it used to be, maybe one at the end of the finals, and now there's one for when they clinch, or at every series, and the whole thing with the glasses.
Yeah,
and-
that's crazy.
Yeah.
In baseball, they do it. They could potentially do it 4 times.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
The NBA, they only do it at the end.
They only do it at the finals? Okay,
Yeah,
all
thank
right,
God.
yeah.
But it is fun, and I have to be honest. You do all the prep you can. You need a little bit of luck.
Yeah. Yep.
I've tried many different things. The camera covered, it gets foggy, and everything's not good. The flash covered, like you need a little bit of luck. But I have been on the receiving end of a couple of big bottles of champagne that have shorted out my camera and flash.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you're primarily the Garden and now Barclays Center, right? So is it fair to say that you know the Knicks players, the Nets players better than other teams? Or
Yeah,
not
just from being around. Like I live in New Jersey, so those are home for me.
So when the Knicks eventually get good again, you'll be there.
God
you'll
willing,
be their
I'm
guy.
knocking wood for my buddy
You know what?
Nat right now.
It's funny. It's tough because I would be a terrible GM because I like, there's certain guys you just gravitate. They're good guys, you know. And tonight it's funny. Tonight after here, I'm going over to the Garden. They're playing the Nets, so I have like mixed emotions. I have some friends on the Knicks, some friends on the Nets, and both players and in the office and coaching staff. So it is kind of funny.
Yeah, I get that too with Lakers and Clippers, and they play in the same building. So it's kind of bizarre to see. You know, they just switch benches. And then, you know, the court is whoever the home team is. And they cover the Laker banners if it's a Clipper game, you know. And the lighting's different, but it's the same. The Lakers use this sort of directional light that they. I think the Knicks and the Lakers are the only ones who use that sort of theatrical lighting.
Interesting.
And
whose idea was that?
LeBron's.
Yeah, it probably started at the Garden, and then the Lakers adopted it
just to get a different look.
Yeah, the Lakers adopted it at the Forum, and they played the first couple of years at Staples with just the regular umbrella lighting, you know, that the Kings use and the Clippers use, and then they wanted to bring back that feeling of sort of a Broadway show kind of feeling, and they brought in these massive trusses of lights, and they actually use those instead of the arena lights.
Wow.
Well,
okay. Interesting.
Real quickly, a couple of questions. First of all, what are any changes for this season now that you know the Showtime has returned and LeBron is in Los Angeles?
I got to wake up earlier.
The changes are he's working a hell of a lot harder.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Did you have to hire more people? Is it that to that degree or?
I did bring on another intern type person, so we would have a backup person to learn how to do all the setup, the pregame setup of all the cameras that we do, and the digital tech stuff. Because now I'm going on the road a little bit more than I thought I would be this season. So, you know, I could be going on the road doing some Laker games, and then the Clippers are home, and my staff photographer Adam Pantozzi, a good friend of yours, he does the Clipper game. But yet, you know, I need to have a staff person there who can work with him. So we're developing a couple of people, which is great. And Adam has moved up the food chain, so now he's shooting. He's totally shooting like all games. He does. He doesn't do digital tech work anymore. And so we had to train a guy we brought in last year, Kyle Tizio from New Jersey. So it's been some transition. Yeah, it's been this year's it's been ramped up quite a bit. I think I had the busiest preseason I've had in a long time.
I bet.
Yeah,
I bet.
Which is fine. I mean, that's what we're here for.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go back to a technical thing. You're both using DSLRs, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
What about mirrorless now? Are we getting to a point where you're looking at them, playing around with them a little bit, or
I haven't.
I tested some last year. The Sony is a big. They were trying to make a push into sports, and it's again, we have very specific needs, and the tethering was a little bit more complex with them, with holding the caption and stuff. They're working out with different versions now, and some of the durability. I know a couple of tennis shooters and golf that shoot Sony, football. Golf, it's interesting because you could never shoot a backswing
During the swing, yeah.
And the Sony with the silent shutter, that is other things have been advertised as such being silent, but they're not really silent. But it goes from not shooting a golf backswing to being able to get 12 frames of Tiger teeing off is awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Similarly to tennis,
Yeah.
tennis they still do allow the shutters, but it is kind of noisy. At some point, it wouldn't surprise me if almost there was some backlash. You throw the ball up for a serve, and all you hear is.
We actually talked about that a little bit on our tennis photography episode.
But the Sony, I have played with. Canon has a new one.
Well,
that
Canon
I
and Nikon both now
right.
have full frame, and
Right.
you're shooting Nikon,
Yeah.
you're shooting
Right.
Canon.
Yeah.
So now, and also you could use all of your lenses. They're all legacy because you have adapters.
Right.
So that's why I was curious to know if you've been maybe tempted to play with them.
I haven't. I'm
more.
curious about it. My friend Mark Terrell, great photographer from AP in Los Angeles, he tests all the new Nikon stuff, and he actually did I think even a World Series game with the mirrorless camera.
Oh, great. All right.
So I'm anxious to talk to him about it.
Just keep that in mind for getting
If
him
anybody
on
wants
photo.
to send us one to test
Yes,
out,
yes.
we'll be
Yeah,
happy
and when
to
they
do
do,
it.
we'll-
Stop by the store on your way.
Right.
Tell them Al sent you.
I have to stay away.
Can I have
Hold
your
on.
credit card?
Just tell them Al sent you. It's
One
all
of
you
the
need.
most difficult things with me working at Madison Square Garden is I have to limit my trips to B&H because I go in for a $30 cable and I walk out spending $600 or $800 and I don't know what I can only go there a couple
call
times a
Alan.
month.
Yeah.
They actually say, "Here he comes."
Totally. So, well, let's maybe wrap it up with a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. You've done, I don't know how many NBA finals, and between the two of you, it's just ridiculous. So I'm gonna press you on this. Or you can answer either question. Can you give me your all-time favorite finals, and then maybe give me an all-time favorite Garden moment?
You know what? Again, good question. I have it's like you have favorite pictures for a while, but then you want to get a better one.
Sure.
You know? And one of my first finals, like I just was very lucky. It was 87, believe it or not, was Lakers at Boston Garden. And I was sitting
old
in a
Garden,
corner. I was in a terrible spot. I had the ref's butt in my way most of the game. Magic came down and he did a game-winning hook shot.
The junior
The
sky hook.
The junior, and
Yeah.
it's sort of crazy. It's Magic Johnson with the hook shot, and in the frame is Larry Bird looking up, Robert Parrish looking up, Kevin McHale looking up. And in those days, I was shooting black and white. Andy was on strobes in color. And I didn't know if I got the shot. We raced back to the hotel. I'm developing film in the hotel, you know.
Yeah.
And it just and partly because of the back end of it, knowing what went into it with developing, you know, at 1 a.m, developing the film to find out if you got the shot or not,
got
you
it.
know.
That's great.
And it's just, you know what, from that to LeBron, there's some Kobe moment. Like one of my favorite shots is a shot that Andy took. Again, it was Boston Garden. I don't know what year it was, but it was Pat Riley pregame in a table in the locker room, and with he was in the shower. Pat Riley's in the shower, sitting at a table. The old Boston Garden was an old, decrepit place, but he was sitting there going over his pregame notes. And it's a great photo, but it's also a testament to like how Andy has worked all these years with just you go in, you take one frame, get like the moment speaks to the photo. Pat Riley was known for like being so intense, but he's literally sitting at the table. It's a wide shot, and you see the shower heads and everything. He's in the shower preparing for the game of the fight. It's awesome.
I think there's a pack of cigarettes on the table because he would talk about it in those days. He would smoke in the shower, and they would.
Isn't there any other place you'd want to smoke?
Yeah, and that they would kind of smoke out the locker room. It's kind of funny. Yeah.
I should have asked this earlier, but are you always on top of the score of the game and what's going on in the action and
You know,
the flow
yes.
of the game? Yeah.
To be honest, yeah.
Yeah,
It's our job. Like you have to be. I see these other guys on their phone about. Like you have to be because every basketball is very situational. We were talking about at different times, different things will happen. You don't always get it, but you have to at least put yourself in a position to get it, and you do have to. The score, the timeouts, and
you have to also be into the flow of the game. You know, a guy like Steph Curry, you know, if he's hitting 7 out of 8 threes, the PA announcer isn't going to tell you that. I have to be aware of that's happening. The guy, he could actually set a record that night. Who knows? And then, of course, there's a milestone. You know, LeBron just passed Dirk Nowitzki for 6th on the all-time. You know, we're usually tipped off to that by the office. Hey, keep in mind, you know, this is going to happen tonight or could happen tonight. And, you know, you got to really do your best to get that photo, you know, of you know, that rebound or that triple-double or whatever it is.
You have to have that awareness about
Yeah.
it.
And if you could choose between a great basketball moment that you captured in, let's say, a so-so photo and a great photo of a boring moment, what would you choose?
You know,
That's a great question.
It's a great. You know, I like the context of things because it puts it into the context of a game-winning shot or the emotion you were talking earlier, the locker room stuff. I remember like one of my favorite pictures is Tim Duncan, Mr. Stoic, going crazy in the locker room, spraying champagne, or Jordan after winning a three-peat, just being very sullen in the locker room.
Nat
that
had the incredible
kind of stuff.
shot of Patrick Ewing after, I guess they went to the finals. That was a winner or something.
Oh, in '94.
And Nat, had the
one?
presence of mind. And usually a shot from the guy's back is not great, but he just knew. And with that iconic garden ceiling, and it's one of my favorite pictures any of my friends have ever shot.
I was going to mention that. Was that? Do you know what you shot that with? Was that a Hasselblad or no?
You know what? I was shooting the game in Hasselblad, then to go run post game. I was shooting Nikon in those days.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a Nikon, I want to say, an 18. And again, little bit of luck never hurts, but to get him, he actually jumped up on the scores table, and I wanted to show it in context with the garden ceiling that is such a unique, iconic building.
Now he's being very modest, because Walter Yost says that in our business, luck is through preparation. So, like, if Nat had to then fumble around, and where's my lens? I have it on the right camera. Do I have the setting? Would the moment be over? 5 minutes already. But we have to be one step ahead. So we have to have in front of us or next to us, behind us, that camera with that lens, that flash, so we can jump up and get what we need to get.
Alrighty. So goes another show. Andrew, if people want to see your work, where should they be going?
Well, Instagram is usually the easiest place, at ADB Photo Inc.
Okay.
And then also for Legends of Sport, we're posting a lot of sort of my iconic photos from the past, but also very relevant to what we're talking about on the podcast. So
which
it's at Legends of Sport.
Okay.
And then the book, The Mamba Mentality, you can buy that on Amazon or wherever you buy your books. It's out now.
Okay, it's a beautiful book.
I think it's actually going into the second printing, because the first printing went crazy.
Wow.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
How do you find the time to shoot?
Yeah, I don't know. Ask my wife.
And Nat, what about yourself?
You know what? I enjoy putting up some of the photos on Instagram as well. It's at Natly Photo, Natly Photo. I am in the very, very beginning stages of working on a greatest hits album book. So maybe this time next year we'll come back.
Something to live for.
That's right.
There we
That's
go.
right.
I knew there was something here. Okay. If you're not a subscriber to the B&H Photography Podcast, take a minute. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, Stitcher, etc., and sign up. It's absolutely free. You should also check out the B&H Photography Podcast landing page on the B&H website. For now, on behalf of Andrew, Nat, Jason, John, and myself, thank you so much for tuning in today.